Hey guys, how's it going? Ghosty Rich here today, and today we're gonna land the motor. Hey Mika, you ready? I think she's ready. So I was a little ahead of myself and I went and bolted the valley tray on while we were doing the assembly. First thing I'm gonna have to do is actually pull this off so that way we can bolt the balancer here to put the engine in the vehicle. So, depending on if you have the valley tray engine holder plate, you can go ahead and bolt that on. For me, that is not how this is done. If you have a nice shiny new plate like this, I suggest using your old valley tray bolts, not your nice shiny new ones, and also take the valley tray off so that way you don't scratch up your beautiful new valley tray.
I would highly suggest at this time, if you want, go ahead and just lube up and slide your crankshaft positioning sensor back in, and go ahead and put this sensor screw back on. This is a pretty short screw. It should probably go to probably 18 foot-pounds.
All right, it's time to put on the flex plate. So, get your Loctite at the ready. You're gonna need an inch-pounds torque wrench, then you're gonna need foot-pounds, and then we're gonna have to do degreed turns on these. So, I would suggest red Loctite. You do you, but these screws, they fail, you're gonna cry. So, you'll have this extra hole in the center, you'll have an extra hole right here. Make sure when you line this up, you can see it through. Just slide this on and put it right there. Kind of give this a nice little squeeze on after. We want to, oh, there. I would leave it sort of loose on until you have all your bolts threaded in. Don't go crazy with this. Just slightly thread them in. Now, give me one sec. I think that's this one right here. Nope. This one right here. Nope. This one right here. Yep. Okay, well, we've now got the first one sort of in. That is going to be HW10. So that is a 10 on your Allen key spectrum. A little bit of Loctite, little small line. We'll go down to the bottom. And just put that right there. Another little line. No, that's too big. Get another extension after. And see the kind of order I'm doing this in? You almost have to, when you're assembling it, do it in this order. So that way, you're constantly jumping from side to side. Now, 22 foot-pounds. So again, get it on. There's 22. What you want to do after you do that, if you have the 1, make it a plus symbol. That's going to be the next plus symbol. And then again over here. There we go, next plus symbol. Next plus. We'll go over here. Perfect. Plus. That's a plus. And last but not least, oh, that's not what I meant to do. One sec. There it goes. There we go. That's our plus symbol. Time to finish it off with a 45-degree turn per bolt. You might need somebody to hold the other side of the crank. We'll know in 1 second. What we're gonna do is switch this to torque measurements, and it's gonna take a second to torque 0 and then angle 0. So we're gonna leave this right here, and I'm not gonna make you watch, but that's gonna zero out. If you don't have that, I'll show you the other option. So what you would do is you'd have to hold this, and as you use your torque wrench, you have to do a 45. So you would go, whoops, sorry. We would tighten, so we would go to 45. And from there, you would know that you've now done the torque spec. It's 45-degree turn on every single bolt. As you can see, if you take a long wrench, this is used for the engine stand, put that there, and we tighten this bolt. What this does is it holds it here so that way the flywheel itself cannot move. I've already done these two because I was testing my theory. Now we're gonna come over here and check this out. So again, let's test. There we go. Perfect. Let's finish this off since my battery just likes to die. Sink this in. There we go. And you know what? This is the last one. I'll do that after. There we go. Circle them both. And again, don't worry. If you're like, oh man, there's a little bit of movement from that engine stand or the engine hoist and stuff like that. Don't worry too bad. That's why we used red Loctite. As long as we know those suckers are really close to the torque spec, it'll take care of it for you. Now that we've got that on, motor is ready to go back in. Oh, it's on the jack stand. There. And now we just rotate to. And then as it'll come down, it'll go forward. Yeah. Perfect. All right.
Slow this thing like just barely.
Yeah. How's it looking? Okay, so that's right there. We're looking at the starter.
You mean steering wheel?
Yes.
Sure looks like a starter. I'll tell you that. Okay, I think this is the part where we had to
Tilt it.
take the shit out of it. Yeah.
If you remember from the removal video, right there, you can see it's sliding pretty much along the steering rack. And over here, it's super, super close here. It's just gonna glide in and then you level it out once it's past the steering rack.
Actually go up?
Yeah, we're on the torque converter.
Torque key. I think we can go less.
Handle that? More? Go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No, a little bit up.
Okay.
No, but it's hanging up. Just go up. Down.
Okay. Where's the torque tube did?
Up. Not too much up, just a bump. Okay, down. Up. Just one. Down.
Okay. Oh,
There we go.
perfect.
Okay, down.
Okay.
Okay, hold it.
Okay.
Up. Nope. Down.
Okay. Right there. Okay. Should we pull it on our engine mounts first?
Up.
Okay.
No, right now. Yeah. Down. Up. Down.
Okay.
Oh, maybe not.
Oh. Oh, there.
Oh, it's fucking hanging up.
Stupid wire. Should we go down a little bit?
Yeah, go down. Oh, that's that fucking plastic.
What's that plastic thing?
The harness.
Okay. It's got a little wiggle room.
Go down a little bit.
Okay.
Hold it.
Okay. There we go.
There we go. Okay, down.
Now, before we go any lower, should we check the torque tube?
No, it's
Oh,
not interfering me at all.
oh, nice.
You can tell that. Okay.
There. Holy smokes. As you can see, it's lots of up, down, up, down. You have to have somebody other than your significant other, because if you have your significant other, wars will be started. I'm just saying. Let's take a look here.
Right, now you got.
Sits nice and tight. Next thing we're gonna do is bolt our engine mounts in. The reason why we did that afterwards is so that way it's just less stuff to get caught up on everything. Just something for you to be aware of, because if you go ahead and try and do it the other way, yeah, you're gonna go crazy. So from here, we're gonna quickly go ahead and put the engine mounts on, and as well as we're gonna have to possibly rotate our crank. Best is with a strap belt, so that way you can line up the bolts that are going to go into your torque tube. Clean your panels with a little bit of spot car wash cleaner, and just go ahead and just clean this section up, especially if your car's been sitting, just to get that surface dust off. Then throw a couple towels on. After you've done that, now we can get underneath and start lining up that torque tube. There's going to be, it doesn't matter how much light, there's no safe way for me to show you how to line up the torque tube. If you're curious about it, what you can do is you can go watch my other video when I disassembled it. It's pretty easy. All you're going to line up is all those little bolts that are sticking out right now. You need to line them up on the actual torque tube. So that way you can just thread those nuts on. Again, what you might also want to do is thread or put a little bit of red Loctite on the threads, or blue Loctite. And what that'll allow you to do is as you torque the nut, it'll torque onto the Loctite. If you labeled like we did, you should have these little bolts right here, and there's the grounds for your wiring harness, which is this big one here. Make sure you thread that in, not to the top. There's a immediate top hole here. One down is on your head as well, and that's a grounding spot. Put that there. We are not putting on that plastic cover that was there.
You can show on this side. It's one of those.
Yeah, the plastic cover is brutal. Do not bolt those 15s back in, because future you, if you ever have to do this again, will just hate you just as much as when you had to remove them the first time. So again, we should have another wiring harness ground over here. Yep, right there. So I'll flip it up. See that little ground? All you do is bring it down towards the bottom of the motor, or the head, and then you'll feel it, and just go ahead and throw that ground on, the ground screw. And then no torque spec, because good luck getting a torque wrench in there. Just put it nice and tight and don't use Loctite, so that way it doesn't insulate and cause no grounding. So as you can see, I've got the bell housing bolts turned in. And if I go into that hole, aha, you can see it. See that? You can actually rotate the torque tube in there by hand if you left your car in neutral when you disconnected the battery like I did. So since I did, I was able to, without moving the crank, I was actually able to move the torque tube shaft and line up my bolts and literally just wiggle and squeeze, and it slid in. It was actually way easier than I was expecting. So yeah, hopefully that gives you some confidence about sliding that back in. Now that we've got that, I'm gonna cinch all these bolts up, get them down. I'll give you torque specs afterwards, so that way anyone that you can actually get a torque wrench on, you can torque to spec and then go from there. Once these torque tube bolts, or I do the bell housing bolts, then the torque tube sandwich in the center. After we do that, then we can work on our engine mounts and getting our engine mounts all screwed up. After that, we can move the engine hoist out of the way and work around everything. When you go to do your motor mounts, which I suggest you do right away, that one right there, the one that I'm pointing at, this one, do that one first before you even put these two screws in. These two you should be able to get torque wrench on. Torque wrench is going to tell you to put it to 43 foot-pounds of torque. I highly doubt you're going to get the torque wrench on that, so feel out the torque on there, and then go ahead and feel out the torque on those ones. So that way you know how to balance it for the third. But other than that, that's all there is to the engine mount. Do that to both sides, so that way we can lower this motor onto the mounts. If you take a look here, I was able to get a 1/2-inch torque wrench in on those flex plate bolts, and it worked great. So go ahead and torque those down to 44 foot-pounds. There's no real sequence. If you really want to, you can go from one side to the other side, from one side to the other side, or a star pattern, whatever you feel like you want to do. Everyone has their own way of doing it. Or you just go all the way around, since you're not doing it to a torque converter, because the torque converter is in the back on this one. And that is how you're going to turn your crank. That's known as a strap wrench. If you want to see how to use it, I will insert a clip here from when I was building the motor, because I turn the engine with a strap wrench at the very end of the video. Once you get a few of those bell housing bolts tightened up and snugged up super tight, what you should do is get your plate out of the way, and then you can get your engine hoist out of the way. Take your valley tray, put it up. Start with the center, do it to 18 foot-pounds, 18 foot-pounds, 18 foot-pounds, 18 foot-pounds, and then 18 foot-pounds. Just basically working from the inside out. After you've done that, you could put on your valve covers. I'm gonna wait for a little bit because mine are pretty shiny, brand new, and I don't really want to scratch them up right now. Just be careful. You don't want to get any debris in there, so make sure you're working with a clean workspace, because if you get any dirt in there, you're gonna cry. So now that we've gotten to this point, I'm gonna try and get those last two bell housing bolts, which are pretty hard to get from the bottom. It's better to try to get them from the top. Reach back here and you can move the plastic around and you can get that bell housing bolt and the one that's right here. So get those two in. I really doubt you're gonna get a torque wrench in there. If you do, kudos to you. And they go to about, you could get it to around 40 foot-pounds. I think on the manual it's gonna tell you about 37. So 37 foot-pounds. And again, even if you grabbed a ratchet real tight and got that, you'd be doing good. The other thing that we've started to do, as you can see, is just kind of lide this out so
So that way I can start figuring out, okay, this one starts at the starter, not the starter, but the steering rack. Clips into here, it wraps around here. There's a sink-in piece here. Probably gonna go right about there, in here. And we just have to route that so it's just in the same routing. So once I get the proper complete routing for that, I will show you. I'm just trying to get the harnesses somewhat out of the way, because now that we have all the bell housing bolts in, technically we're just working backwards from here, getting our harnesses back in. Once we have our wiring harnesses back in and in their situation, then we can slowly start to put components on. I'm going to be putting the drive assembly in the front probably last. I want to get the side pieces all in first. For the knock sensor, it's going to be 18 foot-pounds. I'll show you under the car, of course, the position it needs to be in. Aim the knock sensor basically straight down like this and tighten it to 18 foot-pounds. Then don't forget that little heat shield. I'll show you what that looks like in a sec. But plug this in. It's going to go up and around there. We'll be deleting that later if you're doing the oil cooler relocation kit or an oil cooler relocation in general, which I highly suggest, because this is the worst location for an oil cooler ever. I'll try not to say this every time, but remember, pull this back, press the safety in, and slip your heat shield back up. That's a connector heat shield. Then there's that little metal one that's sitting right here. Go ahead and screw that little small bolt into the spot right beside it. This is only on this side. The other one is protected by the starter heat shield. So this wiring harness, if you take a look, there's that ground right here, right under the motor mount. Make sure you put that 13 back in there at 18 foot-pounds. Make sure you plug your crankshaft positioning sensor back in. Leave this. This is for your starter. This one's for your starter. We plugged in the knock sensor. I have it sitting right here and tightened up, but I might have to, of course, reposition. We'll see once we get the starter in here. But yeah, this is all ready for the starter to get installed now. Next thing you can do, if you'd like, is pull the tape off and slide your injectors back in. Now, I need to warn you that I'm sure you remember this. These didn't come out very easy a lot of the time. What you need to do is switch out the seals. If you're curious about how to do that, rather than putting it into the video, I'm just going to put a link to it in the description. So if you want to see how to switch your injector seals, go and watch that video. It'll be down there in the description. Have a wrench on 18 foot-pounds. What you want to do is make sure this is as seated in as you can get it. So line your injectors up, and then from there, I'm going to start with an inner bolt. Just syncing these up. You want these to try and go in as flush as possible. So what I would like to do usually is just start this off. You'll start to see a gap grow in between the bolts. Okay, and then come over here. Because what we're trying to do is bring these in equally without putting too much pressure on the fuel rail. So if you do this, it helps. Yep, seeing that gap grow, and then we'll come over here again. What I'm doing is I'm monitoring these two bolts, the other two that I'm not using, and making sure that it's going down and making a gap in between those two. And we're trying to keep those gaps equal. Every once in a while, if you want, you can hand tighten the other ones down, but yeah, we're still going down on both. Getting there. Make sure you plug them in on the way in if you want. Saves you a headache later. Well, there we go. That one's now cinched up.
Okay, that one's cinched up. Let's just lock this one in now. That one's 18. There we go. Just bring these ones back down. The reason why you do two, of course, is so you bring it down equally and balanced. And if you don't see any of them, again, you should be almost putting no resistance on this torque wrench as you're doing it. I literally could have done it almost with a 1/4 inch ratchet, but I already have my torque wrench in my hands. You should, if you're feeling any resistance, stop and pull it out and see why. You need to see why you're having any resistance at all. The other thing you can do is use a little bit of assembly lube or oil, but do not put it in the tip of the injector. Meaning, put it only on the little black seals so they slide in a little easier. There we go. Fuel rails are in after you do it to both sides. If you're using the ICT billet kit, make sure you have the O-ring side facing up. Try and press it in the best you can. And then line it up like so. O-ring has to face the pump because there's another O-ring on the plate for this. So then, if you can, we're just gonna aim that sort of straight up. Try and get this in here. There we go. Just line it up like that. Now, we get to put the bolts in. Might have to move this clip out of the way. I wanted to get the injector rails in first. That was my own personal decision. You could technically put this pump in first. Anyways, hand thread those bolts in. On this tab right here, if you take a look, there's a little lifter on the plastic piece. I lifted it, moved it, had to just loosen one of the Velcro ties. Now that I've done that, I can slip that back on because I just torqued both bolts to 18 foot-pounds. Once you've done that, go ahead, slide the clip back together, and we can start to plumb in the S-pipe right there. On all three of these threads, just a little bit, tiniest bit of Loctite, and do it at the, like right there. You do not want any chance of it going into the fuel system. You're just doing this so that way after you get these, they don't back out, because if they do, oh, that is going to be a mess. Now that we've got that going on, we need to make sure we line this up the right way, which should be, let's see, is it like this? Looks like it's going to be like this. That goes into here. Finger tighten this one on. Just like that. This one goes onto here. Line the balls up in there. Tighten it on. Once we've gone ahead and done that, tiny bit more blue Loctite on this one. And then we'll quickly just hand tighten those. And yeah, then we'll quickly tighten the fittings. Again, line our balls up. That one goes there. And this one goes here. It's better to do this while it's all loosey-goosey, so that way we can tighten it up just how she needs to be. The other thing we can quickly do is grab our bolt and put in the spacer and that bolt right here. We'll quickly put that down. And the reason why is we want to make sure that, of course, we aren't bending any pipes as we tighten. For this one, it's 89 inch Alms. There we go. Okay, done. Next thing, we're gonna grab our wrench and tighten up all these fittings. So this right here is technically a 16, but I don't have a 16. So I'm gonna use my next best, which is either a 17 or a 5/8. And you wanna feel the rhythm, as one would say. You want it tight, but remember, not over tight. You know what? I'll give you a torque spec, just in case you have like a crow's feet. Like those little ones that go like this and you can put your torque wrench onto it. I'll give that to you in one sec. I unfortunately do not have those. Those would be extremely handy right about now. There we go. Give me one sec. So it's not much. It's 21 foot-pounds. So, see what I'm doing there? Just making sure. That's gotta be 21 foot-pounds there. Yeah, right there. Like I said, if you don't go dual handing it, it really is a feel. That should be a feel for fuel. Anyways, that should be it right there. Make sure all your plugs are plugged in before continuing. And from here, you could attach this, but I'm gonna wait until I do my valve covers. See if I can get this into the right, there we go. This bolt right here, I just tightened up. You could do it to a torque spec like 89 inch-pounds or go a little more than that. It's just a plastic guide plate. Once we put our starter here, it'll be fine. So now that we've got this in, we're gonna go ahead and put our starter in. I would suggest on the way up, you put this rear bolt on, a little bit of Loctite on the starter side, and crank it up. You could do 18 foot-pounds. I really don't know. You just don't want to break it off. I usually just sink this one up as tight as I can go, and it's not trying to bend the shaft out of the back of the starter. Make sure you plug this bad boy back in, and then, yeah, so we'll plug this in, we'll screw that on, slide our starter up there, thread the bolts in, those two big ones, and those are gonna go down to about 34 to 37 foot-pounds. As you can see, starter wire is behind the heat shield up here. We've got both these torqued down. I ended up doing the starter bolt up there to about 18 foot-pounds. I ended up getting a torque wrench on it. Anyways, so that's on 18 foot-pounds. These two are at, I think, about 35. And this one right here is the one I put, can't even remember. I put it to 89 inch-pounds, and then I ended up giving it a little bit more just to seat it. I didn't quite want to put 18 foot-pounds on it or anything just because I didn't trust the bolt, but that's up to you. Do whatever you feel confident with. Now that we've got this, it's just holding a plastic plate, remember that. This is off my old Valley tray. This is the oil pressure sensor. I was taking a look at the sensor. That's good enough for me. If I were you, before you put this on, if you wanted to, you could put this in a vise. Make sure you have rubber pieces that hold it, because if you use a steel vise on this, it's aluminum, you'll mark it up really easy. So if you use 2 rubber pads, you can get them off Amazon. It holds on to both sides of it. You crank down your vise and you can tighten that up. Same thing that you kind of use for end fittings almost. Anyways, now that we have that sensor on, I think from this point it's time to tidy up some wiring. Now if you're like me and you deleted your MDS system and stuff, you're gonna have a few extra connectors like this one. I like to put balloons over them. I will tape this up and out of the way afterwards, but I like to seal them, like I said, with balloons. So that way, for some reason, maybe I sell the car, somebody wants to go back to MDS for some crazy reason, and they take apart the motor, they don't have to go buy new harnesses. They don't have to do anything like that. Some people will just cut them and get rid of them, or they'll just leave the connectors and let them rust out. Don't worry about the aesthetics too much because you won't see this stuff. It is completely hidden. It's kind of sad because you spend so much money on it, but it's true. You just end up not seeing it anymore after you put the water pump on and everything else. So now that that's sitting there, like I said, I'll probably just tape this one down over here. Intake and Yes, the intake and everything is going to hide all this. Just put this one right here. We'll see if that works in the end. And again, that one won't be seen. Next thing we need to start doing is, of course, tying these down, tying down our grounds. Because once we start putting in the headers and other big items, it's going to be very hard to put all your grounds on. So we might as well do that. Fun fact for you, see that engine mount? I'm going to try and get it to focus in right there. If you pull out that top bolt, you can torque that big bolt for the engine mount, the main engine mount bolt, much, much easier. Let's quickly go over the wiring here. So if we look right off to the side, our ground goes right here. It's kind of hard for me to show you and see. Can you sort of see that bolt? Yeah. Let's kind of zoom in for a second. It's right there. My hand's kind of causing a shadow, but you can see where, see how it sits? Perfect. Shows you how that one sits down there. And then if we back out here, put these guys in, and again, I'd probably put the smaller one to 18 foot-pounds, and then these you could just put to 30 if you want to. They're big, but they don't do much. They just make sure, of course, these wires don't end up in the serpentine, so make sure we put a little bit of torque, put those to 30 foot-pounds, put the one down there to 18 foot-pounds. I'm gonna crank these two down. As you can see, exposed one, 18, this one, 18. And then, once you do that, go down there and plug in every one of those connectors. There should be a spot for every one of them. Don't miss any. And make sure you click in your safeties and press them in. Especially that little one. There's that little wire that's hanging down there. You'll have to grab it and then feed it back through and make sure you plug it in. But yeah, don't miss any connectors. Plug them all back in. I'm gonna quickly tighten these guys in. The other thing I've done is I've cut these straps off because I'm not using the same intake manifold. So I won't have anything to hold on to these straps. Just something for you to think about, because if you're using an aftermarket one, it might not have a spot for those, and you don't want those Christmas trees to be sitting there and then scratching up your manifold. The other thing I'm gonna have to do is, see this little sensor wire right here? I actually have to cut the tape back on this loom and take out this wire because it's gonna plug into the back of mine. So you don't have to do that. Another trick to this is relooming a new piece of wire. You bring this back to here, you cut the tip off this, you just grab two wires and then extend the wire. I'd rather just pull it out and then have it and then reloom it. Again, it's completely up to you. 18 foot-pounds, 18 foot-pounds, and don't forget the guy on the back. You probably won't be able to get a torque wrench on there, but get it as close to 18 as you can. Again, that one goes right into the side of the block. Once we got those three, we can bring our compressor in and we can get ready. Now, what I would suggest you do is, with a tiny bit of sandpaper, you can plug these holes if you want. Just sand the outside so that way we have a nice clean surface to mate with our new O-rings. I'll give you the part number in a second. Grabbed this kit from Napa. It had the two sizes I needed. You know what's crazy? See that big one? It's $7 from the dealership. See the little one? That's $30 from the dealership. This whole pack cost me like 20 bucks. Put it at this funky little angle right here, and then put this bolt at 16 foot-pounds as well. After you do that, now that you've got that, we want to plug in those two connectors. After you plug in the two connectors, put in that top bolt. Don't tighten it all the way yet. Just get it nice and snugged up. You might have to wiggle the compressor like this to get it lined up and in because of that pressure fit dowel right there. You can try to compress it a little bit. I usually don't need to, but yeah, either way, just now go down there and thread in that post down there. As you can see, if you wiggle this, it'll get that bolt in. It takes a little bit of finagling, but you'll get it. Once you get that bolt in there, and like I said, the other thing you can do is you can try to compress that dowel a little bit. I wouldn't bother. I would just, again, wiggle until she slips in. And then right here, this is where the post goes. So take that post, slide it in there, and finger tight. It's only like 16 inch-pounds. And then from there, we'll put the nut on, which actually applies it. So make sure you get the threads in there, don't get me wrong. You need to make sure it gets in there quite a bit. But don't go cranking on it because one, you don't want to strip it. Two, you don't want to snap it. Thread on the nut. Tighten it to 16 foot-pounds. 16 foot-pounds. Double check both clips and huzzah, this is done.
The next thing we need to do is grab our tensioner and we need to bolt that in. I'll give you the torque spec for that in a second. You might as well just quickly grab your tensioner so it is in the picture. For the one you can barely see down there, let's see if I can zoom in. Yeah, you can sort of see it there. Right there. Crank that one down to 18 foot-pounds. Let's back it up. The big guy right here, go to 43 foot-pounds. After you've done that, tensioner is installed. If you want, you can give it a little clean. But yeah, it's just our tensioner. So far AC's in, that's in. I guess next is water pump. As you can see, these are our water pump bolts. I would leave this one to last, don't worry about that one. But see these 6? Throw a little dab of Loctite on every one of them. And then I'm also gonna quickly clean these bolt surfaces just with a rag. Don't use anything abrasive. You don't wanna compromise these threads. But like I said, what we're gonna do is just throw a little bit of Loctite on there. Before we do that, let's show you these gaskets. They're both the same part number. Go ahead and get that part number 251-2066. They look like this. They're crushed gaskets. And again, they're just gonna go on this side of the water pump. So what we want to do is make sure we put all the bolts in the right holes. As you look, there are 6 main ones, but one is shorter. The shorter one, if you look here by your coolant temp sensor, it's right here. So that's your short one. All the other ones are big ones. What you can do, because these actually have kind of like a holder for your screws, you can actually put the screws in place, slide them through the gasket, and then that way when we go up there, you can just start hand threading in all the screws, because what you want to do is actually snug up all 6 bolts, and then we'll put them to torque spec. See, it should look like that. Now go ahead, lift it in, and finger tighten those in. Once you get it sort of started, you can just go ahead and do this, and then balance them out, and try and bring it in at equal measurements. Even if you just do it with the 2 top bolts and the 2 bottom bolts. There we go, you can hear your gasket seating. Good stuff. Just like all things that we've done so far, when we're torquing them down, we'll do inside to outside. There we go. Again, just snugging the bolts up now so it sits flush against the block. Whatever you do, just make sure you have a clean surface, because absolutely anything on those gaskets, as you've seen, I even caught it before I put it on. I had a dog hair on it, and I made sure that I got that dog hair off, just because absolutely any debris at all could be the difference between sealing and not, just like your head gaskets, right? It's a thin, but it's only 1 layer gasket. Again, completely up to you. This is the part that you don't want to leak, because that means taking apart the coolant system, which dealing with coolant always sucks. Before you torque this down, I would go ahead and just put this bolt back into here after you've snugged it down, just so you know it's going to go in perfect. And again, don't torque that one down, just finger tighten, so that way you know you're not going to strip the threads. Keep it nice and loose. Now we'll go ahead, grab our torque wrench, and we'll do 18 foot-pounds just like we've done on everything else. We'll start with the inside bolts and move to the outside bolt. So, there we go. And then we'll come to this side, then down. Over here, and then top, or well, not top, but middle. Yeah, apparently I went a little bit much for that one. Whatever. Come over here, take this one,
do it to 18 foot-pounds as well. There. Perfect.
Next thing to do, inspect those O-rings in there, make sure there's no chips out of them. And then what you can always do is put these little C-clamps, you'll notice one's bigger than the other. Put the big C-clamp on one, the smaller C-clamp on the other, and then just press them on. I suggest actually clicking these clamps in first, because what it'll do is actually press on and then lock in, and then make sure you wiggle them and make sure they are locked in. Because I've actually had this happen before on my VW. One of these wasn't sitting right and it popped off. They should look like that when you seat them in. Again, you just squish them in. One goes through one of the slits, another in the other slit, and the other one right here on the top slit. And as long as you do that, you're good. Now the reason why you always do this to the back is so that way if you ever need to remove them, all you're doing is you're removing your header, or even if you have to, you don't even really have to do that. You want to be able to get in here to be able to pop this out. And if you go ahead and put the clip the opposite way, there's a good chance you're not getting these. So just something to keep in mind. Get it as close as you can to line up, and then use the good old rubber blow to get it in there. Now that we've got that pretty close, I'm going to try and slide the bolt in, but yeah, just like that. Little small pry bar, just you can use that to line this one. All I actually usually do is move it like this, slide the tip in, and then wiggle the alternator and it'll go to the back. Now go ahead and crank that one down to 43 foot-pounds on both bolts. Note the tooth orientation for our power post, and you can go ahead and cover that back up after you put this down to 18 foot-pounds. Do not use blue Loctite, as it might act as an insulator, and then your vehicle will not charge properly. So go ahead, reseat the cap, just so that way it protects the post, and you can plug your alternator back in. Let's make this super simple. Wrap it around your harmonic balancer. After you do that, it goes over top of the tensioner. It goes under the AC. After it's gone under the AC, you just bundle it up like so. See how I've got it like this so to go onto the alternator, and then see how it goes under the water pump? Super easy, right? Now I'll show you what you do. If you can get in here with a 15 and a breaker bar, all you do, let's see, come on. Now, mine's right next to the hose, so if your hoses are attached, it might be a little harder. You might want to use a ratchet, but what you want to do is keep tension on this. Now, push, wrap it around, make sure all the belt is sitting inside the pulleys. Yep, sitting inside that one, Okay, release tension. Boom, you're on. Like I said, it's best to put it on the alternator pulley. Makes it the easiest. Our tensioner's here. We can see everything's on the right side of the belt and the pulleys. Make sure you inspect that. Last thing you want is for it to jump off. Again, you could do this easily with the hoses in. It's just, you have to kind of work around them. I found it easier to quickly show you though without these hoses. Again, just double check all your plugs, but that's it. Everything is now plugged in and ready to go. That's our drive assembly done. If I were you, ignore these connectors that I haven't plugged in yet, but just go around and make sure your whole entire accessory drive is all plugged in, seated. Make sure, once again, do one last thorough check of the belt. But that's it. Good job. Pat yourself on the back. That's the drive accessory. Or accessory drive, whatever you want to say. We have our Holley EFI intake manifold. Told you I was going to do an install on this. So, as you can see, we have a quarter MPT to quarter MPT adapter. That's going to go in right here. Now, if you don't want to keep the quick lock mechanism and you actually want to use what's known as a quick lock or quick twist line, which is like this, you can do so as well. Now, all you would need to do is, of course, get the attachment like this. This is AND 6 to PTFE, and then the other end would go on the the block off valve that's over by the vacuum pump where the T is. You'll notice there's a little block off check valve. You would cut the line, break it off. I'll show you that too. Where I'm not doing it that way, I'm actually using this for something else.
But if you need that end, it's known as twist lock, and this is from Performance World 801006. It's 6 and twist lock because we would want to convert it. Now, if you're going to do that, you would need a 1/4 NPT to 6 and. This is a 3/8 to 6 and. I'll show you why. This is going to be all the way over here, and then I'm going to have the other one over here. It's going to barely fit in here. Now, I'm keeping my quick lock, so what I'm going to end up doing is just opening up a little bit of thread sealant, and again, just wiping off a little bit of the extra as much as I can, and wiping it at the very beginning of these threads. Now, the reason why you always do it at the beginning with these ones is because it actually tightens quite quickly, because NPT threading is tapered. So as you're tightening this, it's going to add into it. We should be able to almost lock in right there. Let's see. Yeah, just like that. And then I might, let's see, can I make it pass? Yes, I can. Good. Because I would like to at least get down to right there. Now that one I can be a little bit more abusive on because of the fact that it's brass. You don't want to do that with the aluminum fitting. If you do that, you could easily melt the threads on it. Now, I might actually have to go back on that. What I want to do is try and feed this on. No, that should actually just let me feed that on. So, got some old lock or some old threading on here. I might still just add just a tiny bit, just so that way I know I've got a little bit of liquid on those threads. Try and keep it off the opening. I always try to make sure I don't get it on the actual inside. That way there's no accidents there. Now, I'm hoping this is going to be an 18. If not, I might have to pause the video and go grab an 18. Oh, no, it's a 19. Give me one sec. Yeah, this is a 19. And again, you can get this particular fitting from Amazon. If I remember, I'll put a link in the description when I do the main video just for this. I doubt I'll do it on the big assembly video just because I'll have so much information on there as it is. And I just want to get this in there as far as it'll allow. Oh, there we go. That's actually really nice. Look at that. So now we have a quick end. Now how this works is you press the line in and it'll lock on, and then all you do is, if you remember, you kind of push it in, it retracts the barbs, and you can slide the line out. Again, if you weren't doing that, you'd do a 1/4 to 6 and right angle, and that's what I'm going to do over here. So again, what I do is I just grab a little bit more of this stuff right here, add it to the very beginning threads. And again, you don't have to do this on the 6 and threads, they're a little different, but definitely use it on the NPT threads so that way it seals. And let's see if I can get it here. And again, the far hole, which is bigger, is 3/8. The ones, these two are 1/4. That's why I said 1/4 on the other ones. All right, and then where is this one? 3/4. Can I get this on there? Oh yeah, and this one's aluminum, so I'm gonna have to try and be a little bit more careful with this one. Let's see, can I get this down? There. I just want it to aim that way. I might have to get it to aim a little bit down. Let's see if this PTFE fitting. Yeah, actually no, it'll slip on right there.
Look at that. Perfect. And this, by the way, is not going to be PTFE. I was just trying this on here. What this one's actually going to be is, I'm going to do an and fitting onto here, which will go straight and then over to our other piece. You should have these spare blanks that come with it. Go ahead, throw a little bit of Loctite on there. Not Loctite, sorry, thread sealer. And we're just gonna, again, try and get at the beginning threads, just like that. That should seal this. Try and seal this every time, just because by the time you put it in, it might dry. Okay, that's already starting to get tight. I realized that my battery is once again low, and this, by the way, is a quarter. There. Now, that should be fine. Now we do need Loctite. Next is for our MAF sensor. Make sure it's semi-lubed up, which this one is. The O-ring is clean. Just wiggle and squeeze in. Next, you'll need a 1/4 screw. I think this is 1 inch long, if I remember the size that I got. This doesn't come with the kit. You have to get your own. And then we're just going to throw a little bit of thread lock on here. And you can put this to like 106 inch-pounds. Just a little bit. Goes right there. And from there, 106. There we go. There we go. It's not much. Perfect. The back end is now set up. So we can reuse these connectors. What you can do is you just go and score and try and keep going on it until you get through this. Because what we want to do is eventually break right through this casing, but you don't want to go too deep. All right, I think I got it there. Let's see. Maybe just not. Okay, a little deeper. Just take your time. Come on. And let's see. Should just break away after a while. Okay, I can feel that we've hit the rib there. There. See how it just breaks out of the line? And look at that. You got yourself a good fitting. What we want to do with this fitting now is, this is a 3/8 barb. Now if you needed a straight one, you would use this. Well, guess what? On the other ends of these ones, you actually have other barbs that will be useful. So you can take this one, you can use a straight one, and then in other cases, there's the twisty or the 90-degree one, which I actually want the 90-degree ones. But either way, I wanted to show you this. After you have these, push one side into some of that push lock line. Again, or twist lock. Looks like that. Look at this. So now I have this, which will go to my dry sump tank, which I just squished that in as tight as I could. And this is 6-handed twist lock, and all you do is you squish it in and twist it around until it gets all the way flush with this little metal plate. It's literally that easy to make. And then it looks nice and like that. So now I'm gonna actually connect this before I even put my manifold in. So that way I just have to turn this and plug in to my dry sump tank, if that makes sense. So like I said, just cut your line to length. I'll actually measure this in a second and I'll give you the length of the line. I made this line 24¼ inches long. Now the next thing that we want to do is tighten this up onto here. So I'm going to actually just use a little bit of Loctite on these threads, so that way you don't have to worry about them backing off. I wouldn't use sealing threads because
there shouldn't be any liquid that comes out of here, and also because it seals right here at the flare. So actually sealing the threads won't do anything, because what we're doing is we're butting it up against the flare. So as long as you have a clean connector, you'll be fine. Again, all we need to do, I like to kind of hold this so it's in the position I want it to be in, which is like that. And then you can kind of tighten this down. Again, with twist lock, you should be able to sort of move it, but yeah. And there. Maybe a little more, right there. Okay, perfect. Now, if you're worried about your fittings, because this isn't gonna be seen, or well, this one will be, that one won't be. That's why I don't care really what wrench I'm using. They do make Allen wrenches that are made of aluminum. Another thing you can do is actually take some electrical tape and put it in here, and it'll act like a cushion, so you can throw a little bit. Make sure you use wrenches that are basically the exact size. Like, I think I just used one that's a little bit bigger. Yeah, this is an 18, so it's probably supposed to be, what, 11/16? Yeah, 11/16 with a little bit of tape. But yeah, anyways, just make sure those are tightened up, and after we do that, we'll go and move this mass airflow sensor line, so that way we can bring the wire around so it can connect in. If you take a look here, this one's your 3 connector. What you need to do is lightly, don't rip on these wires too hard and don't score them too hard. You just need to go along this seam of this, and you'll see little bits of electrical tape like this. You can come up. I like to go up and then pull up a little bit along the tape. That way for sure you're not going to score any wires. After you do that, bring it out till it's at least reaches past the heat fuel pump right here. And now that we've got that much, I'm gonna see if I have a piece of loom that will fit this, but I'm gonna probably loom this, if not at least electrical tape with really good electrical tape. And then I'm gonna tape this closed and seal this back up and make sure that this connector's all sealed up too. So again, just make sure you seal it up real nice like. Hopefully you have some pretty close to color matching electrical tape. Not my best work, not my worst. Right there, connector's right here now, it'll connect in. And this one's ready to go. I've already got that one attached. Let's go ahead. I'm gonna remove this tape that's covering my intake, and from there, I'll show you the next thing that I had to do. I ended up having to get different screws because they give you posts for this. There's absolutely no way you're gonna get this intake manifold on and off with posts unless you completely disassemble it every time. And there's nobody that's gonna wanna do that. So what I did is I went and bought hardware so you can simply bolt and unbolt it. I'm gonna wrap this with tape, and I'm gonna be making a quick valve cover vent line. A little bit of tape's on here. I use a right angle fitting. All you do is line it up, and you can use your palm. Just start pressing it on. Yeah, just like that. If you look inside, you'll see the rubber is sealed. There's no way I can show you really, but yeah, on the inside, it's pressing against the threads. It's not past the threads, but it's sealed right up onto them. Next thing I do is I go here. I start to turn this in. I just want to get it started. The harder ones are the angled ones. Straight ones are easy because you can basically throw a 19 socket on it and be ready to go. Next thing, tiny bit of Loctite. Prevents it from ever coming undone. Well, you can undo it, but it won't let it unwind itself. Go like this, just start holding it. Later on, the tube itself might start turning. Don't try to stop it. If you do, it'll kink it and it'll look horrible. So get this nice and tight in here. Just like that. Unless you have a vise, go ahead and use a vise. And we're gonna keep the tape away from the threads. Perfect. And then very, very carefully making sure
Yep. And then we just go ahead and we tighten it on very, very carefully. And if you do this and you keep your pliers, not your pliers, but your wrenches clean, you won't end up scoring the paint. If you want to, you can make the investment. There are wrenches. I would highly suggest, if you plan on doing this more than once or twice or 3 times, you invest in them. They're not that expensive online. In store, they can be a little bit pricey, but either way, they are a good investment if you're up for it. Especially if you're doing this more than once. So the reason why you don't want to, like I said, you don't want to hold on to it too tight, because if you do, and again, this hose is going to turn a little bit, that's fine. But if you hold on to that hose, it'll end up kinking on you and looking horrible with the braid. As you come near the end, just be careful that you don't jump sides. What you can do, again, at the very end is do a blow test. Just make sure. And right about there. Perfect. Clean it up since I've got sticky goo all over it, but see, she looks pretty pristine. Literally, all I've got is a little bit of sticky goo on there. After you're done creating your fitting, while you're doing the other side so it doesn't get smacked up, I highly suggest you wrap it like this and then just throw a little bit of tape around here. And what it'll do is it'll keep your fitting, just in case it gets moved around from the line, turning around or anything like that, it's not going to destroy your fitting. And that's all there is to it.
When doing these gaskets, always start with the corners. You just come here, then halfway-ish, you'll just squish this corner in, and then squish this corner in, and this corner. And the reason why is if you don't do the corners first, you'll think oh man, my gaskets are way too long, which they won't be. It's just, don't ask me why, but every time with these gaskets, that's how it works. So, like I said, just do that and then go all the way around and make sure it's fully seated in the rings. Just like that. Copy it to all 4 on this side and 4 on the other side. Man, that looks insane. Either way, when you do it, make sure you put the clip so it's away when you're plugging the MAF, so it'll be facing the firewall when it clips in, and you will feel it clip in. Make sure you press in the safety if it's still there. And after you do that, yeah, see our twist lock is right here. This is going to be over here, which is perfect. And what else? I'll negotiate that in a second. We've got that. Our push in one, I made sure it pushed and then it pushed through the seal and in. It's now fully sealed. Make sure you do that. You'll feel it go in, and then it's like the secondary, it pushes all the way into that seal. So once you've done that, you're good. And look at that. Because we're using those right angle adapters, it lines up perfect here. There's no way that you're gonna get this on with those posts that Holley provides. So what you need is some 1 3/4 M6 cap screws, and I'll show you what those are going to look like. Quick thing, with the hard line, it had that barb on the end. I ended up cutting it right where the hard line hose started, so that way it slips in at the right angle. You have to get rid of that 45. That just looks so sick. Either way, like I said, 1 3/4 M16 cap head screws with
the washers that come with it, because there's no way you're gonna block the silver plate anyway, no matter what you do, unless you get it painted. If you paint it, cool, but I don't think you're gonna need to bother. Your wiring harness is gonna cover all your screws when it's done. I just went with caps because they're strong. Either way, I'm gonna thread this last one in, thread them all in by hand or by like this. Just throw an Allen key on them and tighten them up. So this is gonna be fun. I'm gonna show you the best I can. For the torquing down, you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then you do that one more time. First pass, 50 inch-pounds. Second pass, 106 inch-pounds. So first do 50 in that pattern, and then do 106 in that pattern. So again, just sink them all the way down. So 50 inch-pounds first, which is almost nothing. That's already it right there. Go to directly to the other side. Perfect. This side now. There. Opposite side diagonally. And then just cross over to right here. Okay, cross over to right here. Basically doing oversized X's. All right, and then now I'm gonna have to walk around. I'm finally at that point where I can't reach. Okay, and then we'll go over to that far side, right here. Perfect, that's in. And we come over, actually, you know what? We'll do this last corner over here. There we go. And we'll do this one over here. All right. And then from there, set it to 106 inch-pounds. Go from there. Do the exact same thing. Pretty easy. All I did is I slipped the header in, put the header right here. Next thing I'm going to do is slide the gasket on and go from there. Just basically slide it in on a slight 45, bring her in, and then when you're bringing it up, just push these wiring harnesses to the side to get the other end up. Once you do that, you can literally just sit it right here on the starter and on that engine mount. Get your gasket ready, Loctite all 5 bolts, and then what you're going to want to do is hand thread them in. After that, we're just going to crank it down to 15 foot-pounds. If you need a part number for the Mahali one is MS19936. Again, you can find this pretty much from a lot of different places. I'm just using these ones because these are easy to pull off later and replace, because I used graphite gaskets before. They're great for if you're not going to be doing anything to your vehicle for a long time. For me, I'm probably going to be upgrading to twin turbo manifolds in a bit. So since I'm doing that, I want something that's easy to remove and do swap outs. So just some tin gaskets will do me just fine. Pretty easy. Now that we've got these all in, go ahead, take your torque wrench and start in the center and work your way out. So get this one to 15 to 18. I always go on the 18 side, so 18, and then from there, 18, 18, 18, and 18. After you do that, we've got the first side in. I'm not gonna do the driver's side yet because I have to put in the new oil cooler system. But I wanna get this in, get this valve cover in. First thing I'm gonna do though is vacuum clean in there because I've had it off for a little bit. And just in case any debris gotten in there, I wanna make sure that we keep as much foreign matter out of the valve cover area and rocker assembly that we can. So, vacuum clean, and then we'll get those situated. New spark plugs. As you can see, there's your product number for the ones that I'm using. When preparing your spark plug, put a little bit of dielectric grease on your finger. And then what you want to do is put that on the ceramic coating right here. Just like that. And then go ahead, slide your spark plug socket on and just thread it into the cylinder. Then you can finish that off. Whoops, sorry, I had dog hair on there. Once you don't have dog hair on there, go ahead, slide it into your socket just like so. Make sure it's sunk in there really nice in the 5/8 and go thread it in on the header side that we just did. Once it's hand threaded in like so, you should literally be able to thread that thing in at least 10 to 15 times by hand. After she bottoms out, go ahead, take your torque wrench, put it to 13 foot-pounds. I'm going to show you how to get that last spark plug pretty easy. Have the spark plug socket in your hand. Twist your hand like so, and then you should be able to feel in the threads. Don't try to do it this way. Bend your wrist so it's like this, with spark plug and socket in hand, and bring it in this way. That is how you get the last one. There's no other way to do it. The other ones are all easy, but this last one is just brutal. Now that we have that, just make sure that they're all torqued down to your 13 to 15 foot-pounds. New valve cover gasket. Just go ahead, you can kind of rotate these over. And again, remember, when you put in these gaskets, start with the loops, do the straights afterwards. These valve cover gaskets are a prime example of what I was telling you. Put these just like this. Put the first 3 loops in, they give those to you. So that way you know exactly where the first 3 loops are. Then sink these in. After we sink these in and we know they're good, just all the way in. It can be a little bit tight, which is good. That's what we want. After we do that, take it, find the center. That's right there. Go ahead. You might have to do this part a couple times, but get these in first. That way you can just shove that part in after. And again, another one, just like that. If you don't leave a little extra here, yeah, your gasket's gonna be too long. And then you're gonna hate it. So, perfect. Now that we've got that set, oh, we might actually be a little too short now. This is the fun of the gasket. Let's see, if I do that, that'd be enough. Might have to pull a little bit. Yep, perfect. Like I said, it's a balancing act. And it doesn't help that they're both the same part number. So they're both the same gasket. So you don't have to worry about messing that up. Now, let's see here. That goes there. This goes in here. That's good. Let's see, is there any in here? Perfect.
Trust me when I say if you don't do the corners first, you will be short. And then you'll be like, why am I so short on gasket? There we go, almost there. Alrighty. Here's one side done. Perfect. Again, making sure the there's like thicker ribs on these, and you have to make sure. See, look at this. We got a little bit extra here. We'll just do this. Then we just tuck that in. And start at the center. Might have to move this down to the other side, we'll see. Okay, that's in. And now we pump this in. Perfect. Now, make sure it's fully seated all the way around. You don't want anything lifted. If it's lifted, then there's a possibility of leaking. Perfect. There you go. 2 brand new valve cover gaskets installed.
I still got to straighten this one up and tighten it up. Haven't done any Loctite yet because I want to see how the coils are going to sit. But holy smokes, guys, what do you think of the MPI valve covers? These things look insane. I also opted for their titanium hardware. I love the look of it, and it looks kind of like ARP almost, only ARP usually does 12-point stuff, whereas this stuff has an Allen key bolt on the inside, but it's so light and it looks really, really cool. What you can do is you can also order these in black, and you can also blast them with a little bit of heat to get rainbow colors. What I'm gonna end up doing is just putting them in here and letting the heat of the engine bay play the tricks that they're going to. Now, when you get these valve covers, I have another video on setting these things up. I'm gonna post that in the description, or you can go on my channel and just simply type in MPI valve covers. Because holy smokes, you do have to go buy a couple things. This is a 6N to quarter MPT adapter. The other thing is these screws. I can't remember the size, it'll be in that video though. You need to buy these screws. You also need to buy these screws. I believe these ones are about 1 inch long, and these are quarter fine. And I believe these ones might be 5/16 national fine. Yeah, national fine thread, NF thread anyway. These are NF thread, these are NF thread, and I think these are 5/16. Remember, these are 3/4, and these are 1 inch is what I ended up going with. We'll see in a second. What do you guys think of the titanium hardware? Doesn't that look insane? I'm so happy with these MPI valve covers. Now, it doesn't come with a little bit of strain, so I'm gonna go ahead and tell you the bolt sizes that you need to purchase if you get these. But man, look how beautiful they are. These are billet aluminum. They give you the coil brackets for free with these ones. And for a small additional cost, you do get titanium hardware, which I think just finishes it off for sure. These cap screws I had to buy separate. The screws to mount our coils were separate. To go ahead and mount our AND lines later, that was separate. I'm gonna go into that in a second. I went into it in another video, but I just wanna quickly graze over it again now. But either way, notice what I did with the paper towel? That's how you can get those tricky spots like down there.
Let's see if you can guess the torque pattern now. Inside to outside. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then 7, 8, 9, 10. Just do it in the, you can do up, down, or across, whatever you want to do. But just start from the inside, move to the outside, and slowly get wider and wider. 106 inch-pounds. As you can see, the center coil mounts on the inside are only a 5/16, and it looks like it's about a half. And again, it's NF, so fine thread. Get the last bolt over here. You're gonna have to put the 15 back on the breaker bar, loosen this, take the belt off the alternator, quickly pull those 2 alternator bolts up. So that way we can get the alternator out of the way and get the last bolt. It's just in there really, really good. All I did is I cracked the bolt loose. This one I took right out, moved it with my pry bar. Now I can quickly put that bolt in and put it to 106 inch-pounds. Grab some plug wires. We'll grab 4 to start. And just slide them on your spark plugs before we put the coils in the way. So that just goes into there. There, we heard it click. That should be just long enough. And again. Again, make sure you hear that click of it clicking onto the coil. And as you can see, they should just hang right here. Go ahead, put those on. Also, if you're like me and you have the socks, slide the socks on to protect them from the headers. After that, in the correct firing order, make sure you plug in that end of the coil, this end to the other side of the coil, lock in your safety, and tie these into 106 inch-pounds. Again, I purchased these screws separately. They do not come with it. And these are 1/4 by 1 inch cap screws and then added washers. 43 foot-pounds under the water pump, over and around the crank, over top of the idler, under the AC, and then leave it bundled right here. Add that tension, and then after that, put it over here and release. And that's it. Look at that. This side is officially ready for the fuse box to go back in. Pretty exciting stuff. Before we do that, I want to wrap up the other side. Once both sides are caught up to the same, then we can put in the fuse box and button up both sides because the front end is surprisingly easy. With our improved racing kit, you can see we have the oil thermostat, which is going to replace the really badly placed oil cooler, which is also has coolant going through it, and it's located right beside the header. It's probably the worst spot to put an oil cooler. Either way, this goes into your block. I'll show you where. Now, when I had my block serviced and machined, I had them leave this piece loose. If you didn't, it could be a little fun to get out. You're going to need a big socket. I'll show you where it's located. I have the wheel out so I can show you a little better, but see where that engine mount is? It's pretty much just above there. Give me 1 sec and I'll aim it up at it. It's right there by the knock sensor. So that's why we're doing this with the header out. If you had the socket big enough, you would wrap it up and around there. But for me, since I don't have to worry about it, all I have to do is reach up and unscrew it with my fingers. For you, it won't be that easy, but it's surprisingly light when it comes out. That's the first thing you're gonna be like, what? Really? That is kind of light. Anyways, take this out. You no longer need this fitting. We're gonna plug that hole with a fitting that comes with it. So just cover it in a little bit of liquid gasket so that way we can press that up and on there. As you can see, it comes with a massive Allen key. I'm gonna go grab the Allen key size. I believe it's probably a 30 that fits in there, but I'll tell you. And as you can see, they put some sort of Teflon on there. I'll leave it up to you. You can either leave that Teflon on there, or what I'm gonna do is put my liquid stuff so that way it creates a nice liquid gasket that turns into a rubbery substance. And I'll show you what that looks like. It's just a thread sealant. This is what I'm talking about. Just take a little bit of it, line the threads with it just on one line, and as you screw it in, it's going to tighten up and do its thing. Take your torque wrench, set it to 45 foot-pounds right there, and go crank it in.
You can see it's got a little bit of that white oozing out now, which is perfect. Crank that down to about 45 foot-pounds there. And then, now down here, when I made this gasket for my oil pan, I noticed that it's sticking out a little bit. Make sure you clean up the service and just make sure that you clean up right here too. I'm just going to take a little bit of an X-Acto and make sure that we're flush and in line so that way our new piece will sit flush. By the way, if I didn't say it before, the Allen key size is a 17 millimeter.
Use your Allen key and thread these screws right through the gasket. Don't try to pop them through, just thread them and they'll screw through the gasket. Once it gets to this, make sure we have 2 clean surfaces, and I would just go under the vehicle and thread these in real carefully. Again, these go down to 10 foot-pounds.
Sure looks pretty, eh? Now that it's up there, whatever you do, make sure there's no gaps. If there's any gap between that and the block, it will leak. So just make sure there isn't a gap.
From there, I'm not going to be installing this yet, but on your radiator where the oil cooler used to be, slide this cap on there and tighten this down so that way no fluid can escape. I will show you that later on in my video here because I have to install a new radiator and I'll put it on the radiator when I put that on. Alright guys, you have to tell me, what line do you think looks better? This is the braided line. And then that is the push lock line. As you can see, there's the push lock, which I have coming off the manifold, which will be hidden basically by the braided. Now, one thing that I had to do was, I'm gonna show you. So here, I wanted to keep these close, and the problem is, which we'll see on this quick disconnect, I couldn't do that with this. So see how I did push lock and then it goes to the braided? So for these angles, I just did push lock and then it went braided. Now I decided with this one just to leave the push lock because it was such a short run, it seemed dumb to make a spot for leaking. So instead, all I did is I left it as one solid piece, and it doesn't look bad. I actually quite like it. Anyways, as you can see, I have it going to the braided line. Keep in mind, if you like the look of the twist lock, sorry, that's what it's called, twist lock, you could technically just do twist lock with AN fittings and just run your whole system with this, and this line really doesn't look bad. It's really strong. I just really like the look of the braided. Either way, as you can see, push lock or twist lock can actually press onto these fittings. It's perfect, it locks on, and then all you do is you run it to a push lock to AN fitting, and then that's where I go over to there, or you could just adapt it to this one, which would be an AN fitting here, but you'd want to do a twist lock 90, and then you tighten it on. Now this, from right here, this one's going to go right to this one. So for this one, you could grab that end again, and then this is a 26-inch run. I'll show you what I did for here. I didn't measure that one because I actually fabricated that line on the car and then tucked it in. Take a look at this though. Doesn't that look mint? You can't even see it. If you wanted to, you could pull it up and over, but I want it actually hidden behind the loom. So see what I mean there? There's a 90 there. I'm gonna add a 90 over there. This can be strapped together a little bit, even if there's one strap right here. Later on, if I really wanted to, I could switch the silver out. I actually don't mind it though, because it just reminds me and anyone that's using it, silver is fuel, black is air. And it's that simple. So, coming over here, you could actually, if you wanted to, replace this with push lock too. So if you wanted this to all match, you can actually cut the hard line off and put the push or twist lock line right here, and then it would press onto here, You'd have to get the right clips because this is liquid. You want to make sure that you have these tension clips on. And then you could rewrite this or run this with the twist lock. Anyways, I'm going to quickly put the last piece in so you can see just how much it cleans it up.
By the way, notice how it no longer has that one that went to the intake pipe here. The reason why is that's that line that I ran on the back of the manifold. Doesn't that look so much better? See how long that connector is? If I would have used that over here, it would have blocked the radiator cap. So that's why I need to use that twist lock line right there and then adapt it. I'm gonna put in this last 26-inch line that's right here. And again, that's 26 inches from one fitting to the other fitting. This just simply squeezes on to that fitting right there. And then that one simply ties on to right here. Just remember to use a little bit of Loctite as lubrication. And these fittings do not need to be tight. Like, you wanna, of course, get in there and give it a nice little snug up and tighten it up. But do not go ham because they are aluminum fittings and you will melt them. Couple tie wraps are in. We'll turn these around to the back end so you won't even see them. And look at that. And again, I usually just do them tight enough, but not tight enough that you can't move them. Stand back and admire the valve covers. Holy smokes. Next, take your fingers, flex the plastic up all the way around, and we'll start working out your radiator and AC. Your AC is going to have some pressure on it. It does have rubber connecting hoses. Just be careful. You can put a little bit of pressure, you just don't want to put too much. From there, check out this squeeze clip. You just squeeze it and lift a little bit. Well, putting pressure up on this one, you can go ahead and squeeze this one. It's best to make sure both clips have been retracted a little bit first, because if not, it can make this process a little bit more fun. So, compress, might have to get me a little lifting bar right here. Come on. There. So take a look at this. You compress right there. That's up and out. Now we come over here. Right here, you'll see a lift tab. Lift it and pop this off. Put the connector off to the side. You need that little bit of space for when we slide this out. And again, just over here, compress. As you're compressing, you can grab the side a little bit. There, see? And then we do the same over here. This side's a little bit trickier, there. After we do that, the condenser is basically just free. Perfect. Now we can lift our radiator up and out of the way. And apparently pour coolant everywhere. So, now look at the difference. That is a Mishimoto radiator, and this is the factory radiator. What a difference, eh? That's crazy. Now we're gonna grab our vacuum and vacuum out everything in here. Let's get that all cleaned up so that way we don't have to be putting this into a dirty spot. First thing you want to do is pry these out. These right here are your isolators. You need these for the new one. You also need, I'll get that one in a sec, these little rubber feet. So go ahead and you can use a pry tool, whatever you want, and just pop these off. They can be a little fun. Oh, especially since I know there's still a tiny bit of coolant in here. I'm trying not to get it on myself. So just pop those back on here. Those ones go on the feet, these ones go on the side. You can't really mess it up. Another reason why I love Mishimoto. Take a look at the craftsmanship. Put this on here, all their welds look great. Mishimoto on the side. We have one AC piece. The other two are probably brackets, which are gonna fit on right here. We'll take a look at those in a second. But what I would suggest you do is you can now grab it by right here, pop it out of the bag, and just put it back on top of the bag. Put it on the hook side again.
And what we're gonna do is slide in those isolators. So if you want to, you can lube these up. You can spit on it. You could do whatever you want to do, but they just slide on just like that. And then we squeeze these into here. Just careful with your fingies, as I'm, totally doing right now. Just squeeze these in there. They're a little bit tighter, but they should be. Trick for you, grab the center pin. Pop it out, just like that. And then put it back in like so. And then this end goes towards the bolt. So our bolts were going from this side. We can do this. And then when we put the bolt through, it's going to rest on here and hold this. So you always can tell with Mishimoto they use good hardware. They have these little mini screws. Keep all extra ones because I'll tell you, every time I get these, I save them and I always end up using the screws. Anyways, you can see they've got the, what do they call them? Catch, flare, whatever. They have this little extra edge on here. So it actually grips the metal. You can see I have that piece right there. I always suggest a little bit because it's metal on metal, a little bit of blue Loctite because if it rattles loose, then you get pull Humpty Dumpty apart again. So just thread these in here. And we'll thread one more in there. Don't use the washers on these ones. They're meant to catch the metal. If we had it going to another surface, then yeah, you could use washers. I don't bother in this case because they've got those grabbers there. And if you use a washer, it's not going to grab right onto the piece of metal you don't want to move. All right. All we're going to do, set this to even 106 inch-pounds. You don't even have to tell you the truth, but I'm going to do it because I'm so used to doing it. 106. Okay. And then, yeah, there's 106 inch-pounds. And again, these are 10 mil bolts. There we go. And look at that. We've now got a holder on here. Now, this I'd put at about 9 to 10 foot-pounds. Make sure you do this before putting it in. If you don't tighten this up, yeah. Look at that. It says I put to 12. Whatever. Like I said, just make sure it's nice and tight. It is aluminum. You don't want to strip it. Now that we've got that in there, we can slip our radiator in. As we're sliding it in, we'll line up the AC condenser. Again, take a moment to admire your beautiful radiator, and then we'll bring it into here. Slowly bring it down. I just got to move my lines right there. Ta-da! There. That way this can slide over. And then, now that that's sort of in position, we'll just go ahead, pick up our AC condenser, which we know just fits in here. Oh, yeah, it's our lines again. We're gonna lift this, bring this back. Take out the top bolt. From there, see? So that hook that we just put on the floor, that I put two in, only put one in. Once you get one in, you can use this kind of, so it swings up. After you swing it on, put in the next bolt and torque that back down. You might have to use a box wrench just because we don't want to damage that sensor or have any chances of damaging that AC sensor. And whatever you do, after you finish this, don't forget to plug it back in. At least, out of all things, I'm actually surprised, everything on this vehicle seems to have a safety click, and this one doesn't actually have it. I think it's because of how the switch works, but I was quite shocked that, yeah, it doesn't have that same safety they put on absolutely every one of them. So again, just get it tight. And then I'll show you how to do the tops. Now the tops we can torque down to spec. These anyway, they're just gonna be right here. And there's no way you're gonna get a torque wrench in on that one. This one's gonna be little movements. There we go. Okay, that's what the Loctite's for. And then this one, I'm gonna just make sure. There we go. Right there. Perfect. Now that we know that we've got Loctite on there and we've got those locking heads on the screws, that ain't going anywhere. Okay, now we need these two little metal plates. What you do is, again, we're gonna pre-Loctite these, but check this out. I was looking at this, wondering what their theory was behind these. And what they do is they just slide over top of the AC part, just like that, and then lock in here. So there is absolutely no way your AC condenser can fall out. Use your chin to hold up your hood. And there we go. And that one's too loose. Perfect. If you want, go back through and check them all. Now that we've got that, that'll lock it in. You only need the one. The other side, if you take a look here, it doesn't come out far enough for me to feel comfortable trying to make or bend a bracket in there, but you really don't need it. There's no way your AC condenser gets away from this because it's full locking. It's not like it's just a hook. Again, just bend your plastic around, look at that. Doesn't that look good? And then go ahead, put your 10 mil bolts back in, or I can't remember if those are 10 or 13. Anyways, just get those guys, put them in, let's bolt them in. This is the improved racing part. Slip it on right here. And then we put this piece on over top. We might have to loosen this worm gear a bit, but all that happens is worm gear goes on here and make sure it doesn't come off. And that's all there is to that piece. Right here, go ahead, take your first pipe, squeeze it on. Don't put these into your radiator, whatever you do by accident. Just slide that on. I would go ahead and put that clip on right now, and same with this one. That way you have easy access. Then we'll do the second one, and again, you'll have access. When you're doing these clamps, just remember, if you look really closely, you'll see the embedded symbols of the clamps. That's where you want them. If you don't put them in the same, they could leak, some say, but if you want to, move it around. I'm just saying, look if you want for the indents and match them on the clamp. That way it seals in the exact same position. Part number for the Mishimoto radiator is MMRAD C7-14. That one's on there. This one comes on right here. Look at that, nice and clean. I always wish I could find a proper product to make these pipes look black again. And I know that even if I buy new ones, it doesn't matter. They're gonna just get dirty again. So either way, now that we've got that, we know this is gonna come up here, but it goes on the fan shroud. I just wanna make sure it's easily accessible. Go ahead and put these back on, and then we'll twist this back over and put this piece back on. Last piece of coolant. Come over here, slide the last one off of here. If you want, inspect your O-ring in here. It should be fine, as long as you didn't do anything crazy with it. And this goes here, this goes here. So slide that in, slide that in. Don't forget to lock it in by pushing that blue tab back in, and move the last crush clip back up here. Go ahead, move the pipes and hoses around just a little bit and just work it around everything. It's not too hard, just patience, because of course it's gonna catch on a few things. If you want to, you can even just quickly pop this in, so that way you don't have to worry. Now that we've done that, there's the spot down over here for your wiring harness to click into. Just do that and resync in that. Does it have a safety? No, this one just clips in. Sweet. Next thing, Loctite. Press down, put the screws in. If you wanted to, these ones you could put some bigger washers on because they might try to pull through that plastic. But just remember, the Loctite, and then just cinch them up. You try 106 inch-pounds. Just make sure it doesn't pull through the plastic. You know what? I'm not going to 106 inch-pounds with this. No. That's more than tight enough for what we're doing. And the plastic, or those grip nuts that are on the top, or the grip heads, is gonna make sure it doesn't back out anyway. So you got Loctite and you've got the grip nuts. So even though I'm using a torque wrench on this, I would just cinch them down until they're nice and tight and call it a day. There we go. Look at that. When you're coming in to do this, just bring it in at this angle. So up and then in. Then this is right here. Go ahead, thread in your screws. And again, these are just little 10 mils. Nothing too crazy. They go into the riv nuts. Just tighten them down with a driver. No real torque spec because it's nothing too structural. Simple as that. Do that one there and this one here. If you look, it comes on like an angle. Put the angle down. So the streamer side, that little stream side down. You'll notice that one way, it'll fit a little bit nicer into there. So you just line it up and wiggle. And yeah, one side or one way, it'll sit really flush and the other way, it won't for your air filter. These have locking screw tabs. These, you don't need any sort of torque on at all. You just, yeah. The reason why I say that is because they are just plastic screws. So literally just line this up on the plastic on the inside, like that. And then we'll put our screws back in. Easiest way, if you look in here, you'll see that there's that little lip that's all the way around. Line the rubber up with the lip and then slowly bring it in and lock it into place. You just slide and then put those teeth into that bottom piece and flip up and your screws will line up perfect. If you try to put the rubber all the way in first, it won't line up. Make sure the screws are lined up. You don't want to just start self-tapping them into the plastic. And get them both started evenly. I like to get this one in a little bit. And then now get this one in. Yep, it's in the hole, which you can see through here. And now we just tighten these down. And again, just bring this in. Do not put any insane torque on this because it is just going into plastic and you will strip it. Just like that. Bring it in as evenly as possible. There. You'll feel it cap out. And whatever you do, no Loctite. I don't think I have to tell you that, but I'm still gonna say it anyway. If you use Loctite, it's a bad, bad day. Well, might have to reconfigure those a little bit so that sits back in the groove. But that is that. Now it's time to bolt the throttle body on. Just so you don't forget it, go ahead to plug that in, set this so it's locked in. Now that we've done that, you'll see that I have one extra clip left over. That clip right there was for the evap solenoid, which I won't be using anymore. So
I'll probably either balloon that up or tape it up, and I'm gonna just tuck it in right here, just so it's nice and hidden and so water doesn't get in there.
All right, go ahead, a little bit of Loctite on all these screws. Since I'm going into a metal intake manifold now, if yours is plastic, make sure you don't be like me and do this, because if you do, this can cause issues later on with the plastic and it holding screws. But like I said, since we're using a metal one, I'm using this. I need to now take this gasket out of my hand. And the best thing to do is to line up at least 2 of the screws just through here. So that way it comes through there. And one more right here. Perfect. Now get the right size Allen key head so that way we can put it in. And I think that might be this one right here. Yep. It's a 3/16 in this case. So let's go ahead and see what we can do. Just like that. Just like that. Perfect. Now put the last 2 in and I'll give you foot-pounds in a second. All right, so I'm gonna do these at 9 to 10 foot-pounds. If you have your smaller ratchet, that's like 106 inch-pounds, so. There. There we go. Perfect. K-Tech throttle body installed. Go ahead, slide this on and lock it in. Do your pull checks. Perfect. I'm gonna slip some collars on here because I have to make a custom pipe for here. Part number for that K-Tech throttle body is KAT A6885, and then I think it's BLK because it's the black one, not the silver one. Improved Racing's part number is EGM 132T4 for that oil cooler adapter and the block pieces and all that other fun stuff. Go ahead, grab your oil sump screws. Then there's some new gaskets you need to put in. If you go ahead and take a look, the part number for these guys are 152-17990, and just slide both those seals. They're both the same size, both the same seal. Slide them on and then bolt the lines in. The lines, of course, are right there. If you're taking a look, just slip them back into the pan with the new seals and torque the lines down to about 18 foot-pounds. Went ahead and quickly threw my X pipe back in. For those X pipe bolts in the back for the hanger, when you're putting it up, put them at 16 to 18 foot-pounds. I did 18 because they're 13 mil once again. And I have V-bends, so that's why I didn't bother showing you guys. But literally just take your slip-ons, since that's probably what you have, and you could even crank those down a little bit, get them nice and tight. Don't use Loctite or anything, because if you do, what'll end up happening is you'll never get them apart again. They're already hard enough to get apart, and sometimes you have to cut the bolts when you take them out. And I'm sure you know that from when you remove them. Anyways, I quickly put that in. Now I just need to plug in my O2s and strap my wires out of the way. Other than that, that's the whole bottom end. We've already done the dry sump lines. We've done that. I'm gonna quickly just put those on, strap those up. I quickly threw my rim back on. Start here, just do some really low passes and then move your way up, and your tire's probably going to start spinning unless you use an impact. If you have an impact that'll work with it, go ahead and put her to 100 foot-pounds, which is apparently what this car calls for. All right, I've marked out where I'm going to be putting my oil cooler. This is a custom bracket I had a friend make on a CNC machine. I measured it out. It's going to sit right here. I want it to sit right here. I want to leave this spot open so airflow gets to the AC cooler
and the radiator up here and on the sides, and of course it'll pass through the oil cooler and still get some in there. It's not like it's a big solid object. Now, to do this safely, especially since I have to drill up, I don't want to get aluminum shavings in here, so I'm going to take out these 4 bolts right here, and then probably, we'll see how it goes. I might have to release some straps right here. I just want to kind of shimmy it out of the way if I can, and I'll cover it with a bag, because I just don't want a whole bunch of shavings to end up in here, and also gives me a nice shot straight to drilling. After you've got that plate sorted out, you can come down here, and don't try to loosen this side, take them out from the bottom. This is a welded plate. So take all 4 10 mils out from under here so we can see if we can get this cooler moved. If this is up here like this, you just have to push this back, push this towards the back, it'll bow that, and then you pull this forward and it'll release these 3 hooks. Just work them out. Just hang this down here, grab a piece of cardboard and just cover it, or you can tape it up, do whatever you want. Just cover this so that way we can come up here with our drill and make our 2 marks, so that way it's into something solid. All right, so as you can see here, we have our cap screws. These are 1/4 20s, and I've got cap screw, washer, then another washer, then spring washer, then nylocks. That's overdoing it, but I don't want this to fail. I drilled those holes through, and then right here we have bolt going up, we have washer, rubber piece, which I'll show you. I cut them in half, so rubber, rubber, then it's gonna get squished up here, washer, spring washer, and nut. So I'll tighten it from down here, and then I'll sink it up to here. And that is how my oil cooler mount works. Again, I can't tell you where to buy this because I had it custom made for this application. If you're interested in it, and I get enough interest, just post in the comment section, and I can get the gentleman to fabricate some up. All right, so the oil cooler is mounted. Let's go over how I did it. That's that plate that I showed you before. We have the hex cap screw heads, and then we have a washer, and then it goes a spring washer, and lock nut, which is a nylock nut. And then they just tie in here. I went a little long with these screws. I guess I was just being a little bit extreme. And then I have, so these are M6s. In the back are M8s, and they come up, and I have it so the bolt side is up, so it's easier for the nut here. Either way, it goes also, I got these rubber spacers. As you can see, they're like this. I cut 2 of them in half and used those for the base one, and then for the one that's between the frame, I used a full one. That way, if there's ever impact, it can flex a little bit, and it also isolates it. If you look at your radiator and everything else, they have isolators as well. That's why it's got isolators. Either way, part number for those, these are the energy suspension ones, but you can use literally anything. All right, finishing that off, again, was just bolt, washer, and then rubber spacer that was cut in half, then a full spacer comes up here, then it's spacer, spring washer, and again, nylock nut. And look at that. It just flexes a little bit for if it gets hit, but that is a strong brace. I'm putting a lot in there to make it move. From there, because I don't want to block too much airflow, what I'm going to be doing is putting some 45s on here, like this. So that way, they aim straight up. Now, I'm going to actually notch a bit of that plastic out after I'm done, so that way it's just going to have a little bit of the hose going through the plastic. But I'd rather notch the plastic up here than to, of course, go through here and block more airflow to the radiator. So like I said, this way, it's just a little small impedance rather than running my lines right here and then blocking that whole area from airflow. We're at a point now where if you have the same oil cooler, this is not going to affect you. What it is, you need to know your in and out because of your lines. You have to make sure the out goes to the out on your temp piece that we put in from Improved Racing, and you have to know your in. In this, if you have an oil cooler like this, there's probably no in and out. If you have the one where it has a top and then a bottom, you have to make sure, because it's usually in here, out on the bottom. And then of course, there's other ones where it'll cycle through like this. And once again, you have to make sure that you get the in and then the out on the bottom. If you do it the other way around, what'll end up happening is it'll try to push against gravity and it'll affect your oil pressure, and you don't want that. All right, so we've got a case of break-in oil here. We're gonna throw that in our oil cooler here, just making sure my funnel's completely clean. It looks clean, but again, just dust and everything else. You don't want to put foreign materials, or as much as you can. You don't want to put as much foreign materials in as you can. Anyways, what we want to do is pre-fill the oil cooler. So just do this, and then we'll watch the other side. Oh, we'll wait for it. It's going in a little lower. Oh, again, it fills pretty slow. When you're doing this, literally just little droplets at a time, especially near the end. Otherwise, we'll see if it tries to overflow this time, but you'll literally, just a little bit at a time. You can watch the other side and you'll see it start bubbling and the fluid levels are gonna come up. We just wanna pre-fill it the most that we can, so that way it doesn't take so much from our dry sump. All right, if you take a look here, I've got them up at the 2 inlets. There's a tiny bit of air there, but that's fine. It's gonna get pushed through here from the oil pump when it goes. We just wanted to preload this. I mean, it didn't even take as much as I thought it was gonna take, so that's kind of nice. Oil cooler is now full. You can see the same amount. This is a good way to check too, to make sure your oil cooler isn't leaking. So pre-fill it with oil, so that way we can look at it and make sure there's nothing seeping all the way around it. Again, if you spill little, don't let that bother you, so you just wipe it up and then wait and see, and inspect it with a flashlight on both sides if you can. Trust me when I say, check it now, because if you don't fill this and then all of a sudden you start your car up and you've got a pinhole leak, it's gonna pressure all that fluid through there, and then hopefully you don't have your bumper off. I'll be leaving my bumper off, of course, for when we start it, because I want to make sure that we have absolutely no leaks. So now that we've got it to here, any little bit of spillage, chances are, if you've never done this before, you are going to spill, because it's just going to be burping and it's going to shoot a little bit of fluid out. So just make sure you clean it up so you don't actually think when you start this, oh man, I've got a leak, there's fluid on the floor like this. No. Go around, make sure you wipe up everything. What I'm going to be doing from this point is just literally being meticulous, going around this engine for the next couple minutes and making sure I have every single droplet wiped up, and keeping a monitor of anywhere where I might see any fluid, so that way I don't freak out thinking it's a leak later on, because this could be definitely seen as a leak if there's any fluid caught in here and you're like, oh my gosh, it's coming out, when really it's not. Anyways, go ahead from here and tie your fittings on. And this oil coolers thing, like I said, the in and out don't really matter. It's just gonna push from one side to the other. But remember, in through the top, out through the bottom. It'll go like this or whatever. It'll push and go out through the bottom. Or if it's this one, it pushes in through the top and out through the bottom. Either way, that way you're letting gravity work, and the heat will rise. You might be wondering, well, if the heat's rising, why would you do that? Because if the heat's rising, it's pushing the cooler fluid down here. If that makes sense. All right, let's tighten these up, get it going.
Yeah, I've got them going through here. I'll still clean this up a little bit, but most importantly, you're not going to see any of that. This is what you're going to see through the grill. The biggest thing is making sure these lines don't rub against here, because you don't want them to chafe against the metal. And as you can see, I've got space from the plastic. You want to make sure there's space from the plastic. For right here, I even went as far as putting a protective coating, even though I'm going to do some zap strapping to keep the lines kind of central as possible. I just want to keep it there. But as you can see, I hollowed that out, and by doing so, it's going to allow me, and I had to cut out that piece a little bit. I'll probably clean up these cuts, by the way. These are just rough. But like I said, I wanted to be able to just drop this back in here. Well, let's take a look. I did a little bit of modification. I need to clean up my cuts, but let's drop this on here and take a look at that. This will come down right there. That one will come down over here. And these are gonna press a little bit on the lines. This I'm fine with because they're smooth surfaces. And if anything, I can actually pop little holes in here and use them as zap strap holes or tie wrap holes. So I don't make anyone too angry by always saying zap strap. Anyways, and then the next thing you wanna do is make sure, look down there, see how nothing's rubbing those lines? Make sure you have at least a finger width of gap, so that way if this does move around, it's not going to rub up against here. And if you have some foam tape, one thing you can do is put foam tape
all along here on all your edges, even though these really aren't that sharp. Like, it's just you want to make sure they're not going to cut through or rub through the braided line over time. That's your biggest thing. So that's why I want to make sure there's adequate enough space.
If you take a look here, no more clearance issues. It's perfect. Well, there's our final look. I strapped it right here. Strapped it right here so that way it's holding on to these two. You can even, if you want to, throw a band of electrical tape on each of these hoses. I probably might end up doing that. Just throwing, like I said, just so it gives just that extra layer of security. And again, these are abrasive resistant sheaths right here, and they are really strong. They're also for heat, so that way it keeps heat away. So again, they go here and then through the plastic. You can see I've got it off to the corner there, into the side, comes down, away from the pivoting points of the steering rack. So it comes down and away from the exhaust headers. Again, more heat shielding. And if we come under here, you can see them right there. And again, they just go, there's the heat shields right there. It's right there on the tip of the piece there. And again, I just want to cover the whole line. Now, the reason why I have that exposed right there on both sides is so that way I can see if it's going to leak, because I want to know before I put this whole thing back together. The dry sump is just something you do not want to leak. So now that we've got all that done and those tightened up, technically we can pour some oil into the engine and make sure that we have no leaks there either. So make sure that you've tightened your drain plugs to about 15 foot-pounds, or just, you know, if you've done an oil change. And let's go ahead and throw some braking oil in. Again, I'd probably throw in 9.5 quarts. You're probably gonna end up needing more, but again, we can at least start it on 9.5 quarts.
Again, only using braking oil because this is a fresh motor. If you don't, make sure you're using, what is it, 530 synthetic. All right, I've poured half this water jug out into here. The thing is, it only comes up to here. We actually want a little bit more than just 50-50 if you want. Again, Corvette or GM, whatever you want to say, they recommend a 60-40 mix. If you're not driving in winter, I can't see it being a big deal, but again, it's probably also for if you're on the racetrack a lot, so that way you can keep your temps down. I will let you mix to what ratio you would like. As long as you're between 50-50 and 60-40, I'd say you're golden. For this, all you do is keep filling and filling slowly. As you'll see, it'll be full and then it'll go down, because it'll go down here and start filling up your radiator and everything else. So just keep pouring slowly and filling it back up. Leave it for a little bit. Fill it back up, leave it for a little bit, and it's going to slowly go through. When we're done, we'll top it off once we start the car. I need to say right off the start, this is not how this is staying. I literally jimmy rigged this together with a 45 because this is a really hard angle. So if you're trying to make this, I'm going to tell you, just go and buy a kit and plug the PCV air piece off. That goes to your fresh air on there if you're going to go off the intake manifold. Next thing you want to do is come over here. We need to prime the system. So disconnect your coils going to your spark plugs. Next thing you're gonna do is we're gonna find our fuel pump fuse or relay, and we're gonna pull it out so that way we can go ahead and turn the motor over, because we need to prime the oil pump. See this 10 right here? Go ahead, take a pair of needle nose and pop it out. That's your fuel pump. From this point, if you haven't, you'd wanna take your key, you'd slide it in over here, turn it and pop your trunk, rehook your battery up. It's time now for us to crank the motor. Now this could drain your battery quite a bit, just to warn you. It's gonna crank for a little bit, then it's gonna stop. You might wanna do this 2 or 3 times with interval breaks. The reason why is you wanna give your starter time to cool down. If you don't want to, go ahead and crank it a couple times right away. Just be mindful, it will warm up your starter. What this will also allow you to do, if you have an extra set of ears, get them to listen. If you hear any really weird noises when it's trying to crank, stop. So what we're gonna do from this point is just hit our brake and hit start. See? We're gonna leave it for about 15 seconds. And then off the brake. And we're gonna hit stop. And then what we're gonna do is once again, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We're just getting fuel in there. Or not fuel, sorry, oil into the pump. From here, we're gonna stop. Again, this is why it's very important to use engine assembly lube. And one more time. 10, 9. And I think that should be good. We've now pumped oil throughout the whole system. Let's go ahead and put some coils back on and some fuel.
All right, this is the best little module. I'm gonna give you a quick run through. I do have a more thorough run through on first time setup of this. Basically, I'm gonna give you the gist of it, and if you need the other video, just type in Ghostly Rich MVI2 Plus and it'll pop up and show you how to properly do this. The quick and easy gist of it, purchase this dongle, plug it into your computer, go to hptuners.com, create an account, and then add this dongle. I'm not going to show you my code that's on there, but you put the code onto your account. After you've done so, all you do is you plug this in, or leave this plugged into your laptop, plug this into your car. After you've done so, come up here. See where my mouse is hovering? You would click on there, read. That should be glowing green after you plug this in. After pressing read, leave it for about 15 minutes because it's going to go through and read your entire car. After you do that, you'll have a tune that pops up, and this is where you'll be at. Let's quickly go through this. First thing you need to note, engine button. Click on the engine. Click on fuel. Then click on lean fuel savings. Go over here, disable. This is for if you put in a new camshaft and got rid of those collapsible lifters and all the solenoids, so that way you don't want displacement on demand anymore, aka 4-cylinder mode. So after we've done that, we've deleted it. The other one that you're going to have to do, because you would have put a new camshaft in, chances are you no longer have variable valve timing. If this is the case, you would go to airflow. Variable camshaft right here. After you do that, go here, camshafts, none. That way it knows you have no variable valve timing. Now that we've done that, we can go ahead and we can flash this to our vehicle. This is a base tune. You're still going to want to take this to a tuner and you're going to want them to work the magic. But you have to do this to first do it. Now, when you go to write this to the vehicle, it's going to pop up with a message say, hey, you need to pay for your credits. There's 4 credits needed. So, well, for this Corvette anyway. What you would do is you'd go on to the HP tuners. It'll actually give you a link to it. You click it, add 4 to cart, press OK, put in your credit card information and pay for those 4 credits. All of a sudden you're going to do it and you're going to say, Richard, I just did that and it's not applying. Doesn't matter what I do. Actually, this is what you need to do. You need to click help. After it's been paid for and you get your receipt, press resync interface. As soon as you do that, it's going to resync it and it'll say it's added the credits to your account. After you've added them to your account, you would then click write again, which is this little one right here, and it'll say, hey, you need to pay for your credits. And then it'll show that you have 4 available. Click on it. Okay. It then will go through, update, and bam, you can now write to your vehicle.
Next thing you'd want to do is press File, Save As, and then you'll save it as VVT, delete, and DOD. So that way you know that's the portion and when you actually deleted that. So if you ever need to backdate it in the future, you know where to stop. Or you can just press save because you'll never use or backdate it past that point. But
let's say in the future, if you were to try and tune some certain things yourself, it's always best to make a new tuning file so you can always backdate your tunes much easier. I apologize for the dinging, but from here, what you can do is press right to vehicle. From there, you would press right and calibrate, right calibration, and that's it. And press right. There we go. And let it do its thing. I'm not gonna make you listen to this the entire time. Or actually, it's only 30 seconds apparently. Can you put up with it? Let's see. There we go. The ride is complete. By the way, if you're wondering how to put your car into service mode, click and hold to start, not with your foot on the brake. So just click and hold it for 5 seconds and it'll go into service mode and put it up. Complete. Close. We should now have that deleted. Now the other thing you can do is you can do live engine checkouts, you can do stuff like that. Now what you'd want to do for that is, we finished in here, you can go in and you can hit scanner. So that way, after you start your vehicle, you can see all the codes you get, because you're probably gonna get codes for everything you removed, like solenoids and other things. And I'll show you later on how to remove it so those codes don't show up. We can do that in the VCM editor. Sorry for the dinging, I'm gonna make this quick. If you take a look here, I did a read of codes. You do that by clicking on over here. When you click on here, what's going to end up doing is it'll read all the codes and then pop them up for you. You can go through here. As you can see, when we when we disconnected the injectors and stuff like that, came up with a code when we primed the system. And then if you also go through here, you're going to have codes for everything. These could be from the old owner, it could be from you. These are all just little pending hidden codes. Not everything is a check engine light, right? Oh, but yeah, so you'd press connect to vehicle and then you'd click here and these are all, and then you'd hit read DTCs and you can go ahead and you can clear them all so that way you're starting fresh. And then now what you would do is, now that we've started from fresh, when we start the vehicle, you'll be able to see all the new DTCs. Now the other thing you can do, of course, is set up some graphs if you'd like to. Again, this is more for tuners. I'm just trying to get you started so you can get your vehicle to a tuner. Built another motor, guys. Let's go ahead and start it up. See how it kind of evened out there? We're in way better. And that little bit of smoke you seen, that was all. You're gonna see smoke too when you start yours. It's gonna be smoke coming off the headers and everything else. I got a little bit of oil and different lubricants on it. As you guys can see, she's sitting great. Now you're probably wondering, Rich, what about putting the front back on? Like sliding your hood back on and lining up your bumper and everything. Guys, it's gonna go detuning for a little bit. I wanna get this up and going for you. I will have other videos from which I do finish that, and I'll link them in the description once they're up. It could be a couple weeks, but really all there is putting the bumper cover back on and putting the hood back on. And of course, the tunnel and all that other fun stuff. If you're wondering about putting the tunnel back on and torque specs for that, I have that in another video for the headers. So just type in Ghostly Rich
C7 headers and so on and so forth. I don't have anything for the front bumper and the hood because I haven't really pulled them off until now. But I gotta say, I'm so excited. There's so much more still to do. Thanks again for watching. Press like if these videos have been helping you out, and subscribe for more. I cannot wait for the content ahead. Everything from track days to just simply tinkering more on it. And don't forget, even after this is done, I got a twin turbo it.